Before we start the video, I've never done a sponsorship on one of my videos. I've turned down every email I've gotten proposing one, never done a Patreon or asked for any money or any kind of support other than just likes and subscribes. And I don't plan on doing that anytime in the near future. I do this for fun, and any money I make through YouTube ad revenue is just a bonus, and I can't believe I actually get paid to do this. However, I have a couple of good friends that are in a band together, and despite how difficult and unreliable it is as a paycheck, have made their careers as independent touring artists. They recently put all of their time, effort, and money into self-publishing a graphic novel chronicling one of their most difficult tours, and they were really excited about it. But the small publisher they used for printing misprinted the first 2,000 copies, and they had to eat the cost, which is a huge setback for them. These are great people, and I wanted to help them out, so for that reason, would mean a ton to me if you checked out their graphic novel and possibly bought a copy. I'm putting an Amazon link in the description in case you're interested. This is the only shout out or ask for help I've ever done before, and the only one I plan on doing anytime in the near future. But this is a major setback to some good friends of mine, and I would love it if you could help them out. With that said, onto the video. There was a really interesting post on Reddit the other day that I jumped into head first. Reddit user YubYubCommander posted that they applied for a job in Yankees operations last year, and they gave him a screener quiz to test his statistical knowledge. Not only did YubYubCommander post the quiz, but had it as a Google form, so he was able to collect over 2,700 responses to the quiz and posted the results. This was eye-opening for a number of reasons. First, it gives an idea of what concepts an MLB team wants their operations employees to value or know from the outset. Second, the quiz had a definite correct answer for each question. I put correct in quotes because, well, we'll get into that. And third, seeing how a large baseball community answered those questions was surprising to me in a number of ways. And we're going to go into every single one of those questions, show what the intended answer is, show why some of the questions are poorly worded, and talk about the issues some people brought up in debating what the answers were. If you want to take a look at the quiz and record your responses before we jump into this, I included a link to the form in the video description down below the like button. It is a Google form that requires a login, so once you hit submit, you won't be able to go back and look at the questions or your answers. So I would recommend writing your answers down or not submitting so you can follow along as we go through the questions in the video. I would ask though, if you plan on submitting your answers, don't watch the video and change your answers due to the video and then submit it, as that would mess up YubYubCommander's data collection. I have a few things to bring up before we get into the quiz. The first is the mindset to approach a standardized test or a screening test. High schoolers out there, take note because these few pieces of advice apply to the ACT and SAT as well. First, if you're answering a multiple choice question on a test like this, and are going back and forth on two possible answers, if for one of the answers you're coming up with scenarios or situations where that could be the answer, that's most likely not going to be the correct answer. These tests look for the best answer, meaning the one that will be true the majority of the time based on the information given, and not an answer that will be true 100% of the time. There are a lot of questions on this quiz that are like that, and I'll give you a hypothetical example. If the question is, what team is better? A team that wins 90 games in a season or a team that wins 89 games in a season? Your first knee-jerk reaction is probably, oh, it'd be the 90-win team. But then you could go, wait, what if the 89-win team had a harder schedule? Or has a much better run differential? In fact, one extra win over 162 games is almost meaningless. And all of that is true. There are a number of reasons why an 89-win team could be better than a 90-win team. But in the slim majority of cases with the information provided, the best answer is the 90-win team is better. I would say that's a terrible question to ask on a quiz like this, but it isn't far off from what some of these questions are like. When you take a step back and remind yourself to answer the best answer given the information provided, a lot of these questions become clearly objective in what the best answer is. The second piece of advice when approaching standardized test is if there's a true-false statement or a possible multiple choice answer that contains the word always or never or implies something similar to that, ironically, those are almost always not the correct answer or a false statement. In those situations, unlike what I said before, you do just have to come up with one hypothetical example, no matter how outlandish, to render the statement false. This is another thing we'll see in this quiz. If you take those two pieces of advice into a test like the ACTs, I guarantee you it will probably give you an additional 3 or 4 more questions right, as well as save you some time from going back and forth on one question. Need to mention this as well. Based on the Reddit discourse, there is going to be some very heated disagreement with what I'm going to say is the best answer for each question. I have to walk a fine line here because it's extremely easy for me to come off as baseball nerd that's never played and puts more faith in the numbers than people, or someone who thinks they're smarter than everyone else, and that is not my intention at all. And as far as never having played baseball, I did get an RBI in a minor league game this year at the age of 39. How many of you can say that? Regardless, I will stand by the belief that there is an objective best answer for each one of these questions. I even discussed the quiz with Dan Zimberski, who has consulted on entry quizzes like this for other teams to confirm the correct answers. These questions also intentionally target our normal human cognitive biases and mistakes humans make when processing information to try to lead you to the wrong answer. Dan even mentioned of the quiz, they went to the well a little too often in making the conventional wisdom one the wrong answer. I also believe a lot of people on Reddit took this quiz pretty quickly, not taking their time like they would have if they were really doing a job application, which means they're going to fall victim to these tricks more often. With that in mind, the questions that got a more heated debate, I'm going to go into a little deeper explanation of why the best answer is the best answer. That said, some of these questions are worded poorly and leave more room for debate than they should. The form also randomizes the order for each user, so the order I'm going to go through may not match what you see on the form. I'm going to bring up each question, the answers Reddit gave, the best answer along with the reasoning, and go through any discussions or reasons why people took exception with that best answer. And believe me, there was a lot of discussion. On to the quiz. Question 1. Given no other information, which of the following players would you start tomorrow in a must-win game? Assume each has 500 plate appearances so far on the season. Player A, 850 OPS, 2 hits in his last 35 plate appearances, or Player B, 800 OPS, 13 hits in his last 35 plate appearances. Reddit answered 64.6% Player B and 35.4% Player A. One thing this quiz really drills home is 3 concepts we see here. Not falling victim to recency bias, putting more weight into larger samples, and putting more weight into more descriptive stats. For recency bias, Player A has the much better underlying season stats, while Player B is not as good overall, but has been hotter recently. There could be reasons Player A is playing so poorly, and that could impact his recent and future results. But that goes back to my discussion on making assumptions. Yes, that could be the case. But players get hot and cold in small samples all the time, and most of the time, the better thing to rely on is the larger sample. Secondly, OPS tells you a lot more about the player than the number of hits in the number of plate appearances. We don't know the quality of the hits, singles versus home runs. We don't know how many walks each player had. We don't even really know their batting average. It's a small amount of information we're actually given on that recent small sample size. For that reason, I hate to disagree with Reddit right off the bat, but Player A is the best answer. Question 2. Do you think player opt-outs are better for the player, better for the team, or mutually beneficial? 74% of Reddit said better for the player, 2.2% said better for the team, and 23.5% said mutually beneficial. This is a clear-cut answer that it's better for the player. Player opt-outs put all the power in the player's hands regarding their future. If they're all of a sudden playing like crap, they can opt in for the rest of their contract and get paid well above their production. Or if they're outperforming their contract, they can opt out and get a better contract in free agency. You could argue that it could slightly benefit the team due to negotiating a lower salary and including the opt-out, but it clearly favors the player more than the team. Question 3. Given no other information, which of the following hitters would you pick to hit with the game on the line in the 9th inning of a must-win game? Player A, 750 OPS, 350 average with runners in scoring position this season in 500 plate appearances. Player B, 800 OPS, 250 average with runners in scoring position this season, also 500 plate appearances. 57.3% of Reddit answered Player A, 42.7% answered B. This one is very similar to question number 1. You're given a larger sample size with a more descriptive stat, their OPS and 500 plate appearances, versus a much smaller sample size given a less descriptive stat, batting average for plate appearances with runners in scoring position. OPS over a full season gives you a much better idea of who the better hitter is versus batting average with runners in scoring position. Again, I'm disagreeing with Reddit, but the best answer to this question is player B. Although I'm fully expecting some angry responses in the comment section in regards to if clutch exists, which I don't even want to get into at the moment. Question 4. Which of the following stats would most clearly indicate whether a hitter's 350 batting average is due for regression? OPS, OPS plus, WOBA, BABIP, OBP, or slugging? Thankfully, we get one most people agree on. 79.1% of Reddit said BABIP, and 79.1% of Reddit would be correct. BABIP is the only stat on the list that is predictive in nature and would have something to say regarding potential regression. I could go into how high BABIP is absolutely a skill hitters had, but players will tend to have their BABIP stabilized to their career norms, so you can use it as a measuring stick to determine if the player has been lucky or unlucky in their batting average. Question 5. A 23-year-old prospect has a 150 ERA and 5 MLB starts this year. Given no other information, which of the following do you think would be the closest to his MLB performance as a starter next year? 1 ERA, 1.5 ERA, 2 ERA, 2.5 ERA, 2.75 ERA, or 3 ERA? 51.6% of Reddit selected 3 ERA. 19.7% said 2.75 ERA, 18.4% said 250, and a small amount of people said 2, 1.5, or 1. This one I saw a lot of people get angry over, saying, how can you possibly project that? Which is the correct line of thinking. There are only 2 qualified pitchers in 2023 with an ERA under 2.75, and only 5 with an ERA under 3. So if I rephrase this question, the answer becomes a lot more obvious. If a rookie prospect pitcher debuts with 5 very good games, would you consider him one of the top 5 pitchers in the league? The sample size is so small and uses an unreliable stat in smaller samples like ERA, so you shouldn't be able to conclude that off of only 5 games. All of the possible answers given are extremely low and Cy Young caliber stats, so the best answer, and the one closest to expectations, would be the highest answer of 3 ERA. Question 6. Which of the following pitchers would you prefer to have on your team? Pitcher A, 350 FIP, 65% quality start percentage, or pitcher B, 450 FIP, 100% quality start percentage? This one was pretty evenly split, but 52.2% of Reddit picked pitcher A, while 48.7% picked pitcher B. This one goes back to what is a more indicative stat of pitcher ability. Quality start percentage isn't a bad stat, but FIP is the one that tells you more about their underlying ability. It's tricky because a 100% quality start percentage means pitcher B goes at least 6 innings in every start, but a 1-run difference in FIP is massive, and pitcher A's quality start percentage of 65% is still great. National League Cy Young favorite Blake Snell only has a 62.5% quality start percentage with a 3.44 FIP. So this question is really asking, would you rather have Cy Young favorite Blake Snell or a pitcher that can reliably go 6 innings with below league average stuff? Framing it like that, pitcher A is the best answer. Question 7, true or false? An elite reliever is worth less to a team that already has 6 elite relievers than to an overall equally talented team that only has 1 elite reliever. Assume both teams use a standard 5-man rotation with starters who average 5 innings per game. True, because the first team doesn't have as many high-leverage innings to spread around, or false, because you can never have enough elite relievers and the first team might end up having injuries. 54% of Reddit said true, while 46% of Reddit said false. This one we have to go back to a tip I gave earlier. If an answer contains the word always or never, it's probably not the right answer. The false answer states you can never have enough elite relievers, which since they said never, you just have to give one example where this isn't true. Let's give a crazy example where a team has 30 elite relievers. With only 8 bullpen slots, 22 of those relievers are going to be doing nothing. It would be insane for the team to keep all of those relievers and not trade some of them to improve in other areas. This question also highlights the law of diminishing returns, which states there's a decrease in incremental output as the amount of a single factor of production is incrementally increased, meaning for each additional elite reliever, you get less bang for your buck than the previous one. For that reason, the answer in this case is true. Question 8. Of the following pitching stats, which is the most robust, i.e. value-driven, all-encompassing? WHIP, FIP, ERA, quality start percentage, or left on base percentage. 70.5% of Reddit said FIP, 18.8% of Reddit said WHIP, and the remaining 10% was split among the other three. This one, you can go back to question 6, where almost half of Reddit said they'd take the player with the better quality start percentage, but higher FIP. But at the same time, a lot of the people that answered that believe FIP is the most value-driven, all-encompassing stat. This is another reason why I believe some people just plowed through this quiz quickly, because they clearly believe FIP is the best among those 5 stats. But on another question, they said they'd take a player that's better in one of the other stats. In the end, this question is a straightforward test of stats, and which ones correlate most with run prevention and pitcher ability. And most of Reddit got this one. It's FIP. If I were to rank these from top to bottom in regard to correlation with future run prevention and underlying pitcher ability, it would go FIP, WHIP, ERA, quality start percentage, and then left on base percentage. Question 9, true or false? Average with runners in scoring position is a good measure of offensive talent because good hitters find a way to drive in runs. 65.1% of Reddit said false, while 34.9% said true. There's 2 problems with this true-false statement. First, splits with runners in scoring position are usually a much smaller sample size than overall production. And secondly, while I'm not someone that says batting average is useless, there are, by far, better stats to measure someone's offensive talent than batting average. On base percentage, slugging, OPS, OPS+, WOBA, WRC+, etc., etc., etc. Average with runners in scoring position is a measure of offensive talent, but it isn't a very good one. Because of that, the best answer to this question is false. Question 10, true or false? Openers can work for a few games, but trying to use them in 40 to 50 games per year would be an unsustainable strategy. 54.8% of Reddit said true, 45.2% said false. This one is a tricky one. A lot of people on Reddit pointed out if you assume how teams have been using openers, basically as bullpen days where the follower only goes 3 to 4 innings, then yeah, you could make the argument that it's unsustainable as it will burn your bullpen usage and fatigue arms more. But the Rays have pretty much disproven this in recent years. From an article in January of this year, Tampa Bay has used an opener 151 times since introducing the concept on May 19, 2018, and have gone 91-60 in those games. For comparison, no Rays pitcher has started more than 72 games since the beginning of the 2018 season, including the postseason, and only 4 have made more than 50 starts. If you break it down, Tampa Bay has used an opener 30-plus times in both 2019 and 2021, and they've clearly had massive success doing this. But the other aspect of this question is the pitcher usage people are assuming. They're assuming a bullpen day where you burn through 5 or 6 pitchers over the course of a game. But that's an assumption that isn't automatically true for using an opener strategy. Using an opener for 1 inning and then having a follower pitch 6 innings is no different in terms of pitcher fatigue than using a starter for 6 innings and then going to the bullpen. And in this true-false statement, there's an implied always in there. Openers can work for a few games, but trying to use them in 40 to 50 games per year would always be an unsustainable strategy. If you can prove that there could be a sustainable way to use openers, which I think I did with my follower going 6 innings example, then this statement is false. Question 11. In which one of the following scenarios is it smarter to run a contact play with a runner on third, i.e. the runner breaks for home as soon as the ball hits the bat? With 0 outs, with 1 out. 75.2% of Reddit said with 1 out, 24.8% of Reddit said with 0 outs. If you step back and think about this one for a little bit, the answer becomes clear. If you have a runner on third with 1 out, you most likely have at least 2 chances to drive the runner in, including a sac fly situation. Meanwhile, with 2 outs, your chances of driving a runner from third is a lot smaller. You only have 1 out to work with, and you can't have a productive out like a sac fly to drive the runner in. Therefore, creating the first out at home with that runner at third would be a much bigger hit to your expected run production the rest of the inning than creating the second out at home. It's smarter to run a contact play with 1 out versus 0 outs. Question 12. Which of the following pitchers would you prefer to have on your team? Pitcher A pitches 4.2 innings and gives up 0 runs every time, or pitcher B pitches 6 innings and gives up 2 runs every time. 58.2% answered pitcher A and 41.8% answered pitcher B. A lot of people that answered B explained that you're going to have to go to your bullpen early with probably one of your worst relievers, so going 6 innings with 2 runs every time is more reliable. The difference between these two pitchers is 1.1 innings giving up 2 runs, equal to a 13.5 ERA. You could have the worst scrub reliever straight out of AAA covering the difference, and they would still outperform a 13.5 ERA. There were a lot of people that argue with this point, so I did a little bit of research. We've never had a reliever in baseball history throw over 15 innings with a 13.5 ERA. Going into a list of the worst reliever seasons by the Hardball Times, even their worst reliever season in the 150-year history of baseball was only a 7.83 ERA. The gap between these two pitchers may not seem that big at first glance, but when you dig into it, it is monumental, and any bullpen, even the worst bullpens in history, would easily be able to bridge the innings pitched gap and still come out with pitcher A well on top. The best answer to this question is pitcher A. Question 13. Given no other information, which of the following hitters would you prefer to have on your team? Hitter A, 300 batting average, 450 on base percentage, 600 slugging. Or hitter B, 0 batting average, 1000 on base percentage, and 0 slugging. This question got the most heated debate of any of them, and I 100% understand the debate. It's not that great of a question. 50.5% of Reddit answered hitter A, while 49.5% answered hitter B. And the discussion was not about which stat line provides more value. Almost everyone agreed that the guy that never makes an out would be more valuable. In fact, a guy that never creates an out would be the greatest player in baseball history by a landslide. The issue that people took with this question is a 1000 on-base percentage is nonsensical in a large sample. Because of that, people assume the sample was only going to be 4 or 5 plate appearances. And because it's a small sample, it tells you pretty much nothing about the player. Meanwhile, hitter A is just a really, really good hitter. And people arguing that have got a point. Nobody has ever come close to the stat line of hitter B, even in just a 4 or 5 game sample. It's a stat line that you'll never see in a large sample, so making that assumption that it's a small sample is reasonable. But remember what I said about standardized tests, that you never want to make assumptions that could make one answer correct, even though on face value another answer is more correct. The question's intent is which stat line would be worth more, regardless if it's a reasonable stat line. And the intended correct answer is hitter B. I also have to point out that nobody objected to the previous question having a pitcher that always went 4.2 innings and gave up 0 runs, which is equally as ridiculous as a player having a 0-1000 triple slash. The only difference is the previous question clearly spelled out the ridiculousness, while this one it was only implied. Question 14. Given no other information, which of the following teams would you prefer to face in a 5-game playoff series? Team A, 98-64 regular season record, 1-5 versus your team in the regular season, or Team B, 92-70 regular season record, 6-0 versus your team in the regular season. 69.7% of Reddit picked Team A, while 30.3% picked Team B. This is kind of similar to my example question of which team is better, a 90-win team or an 89-win team. These teams seem pretty close. And especially with the team with the better record doing poorly against your team, it can give the impression that you would want to face the team that's been worse against your team. But 6 games is a very small sample. Teams get hot, teams get cold, and 6 games doesn't tell you much over a 162-game season. The 2023 Oakland A's beat the Braves in a 3-game series and swept the Brewers in Milwaukee in a 3-game series. Would anyone seriously suggest that they think the A's would beat the Braves or the Brewers in a 5-game series? So the best answer is to ignore the smaller sample and look at the overall records. And Team A is the hypothetical better team a majority of the time. So the best answer is you would prefer to face Team B. But this question is clearly designed to be tricky and get people to answer Team A. Question 15. Which of the following affects WOBA but not ex-WOBA? Quality of contact, quality of competition, defense on batted balls, or leverage of plate appearance? 51.7% of Reddit said defense on batted balls, 18.4% said leverage of plate appearances, 16.1% said quality of competition, and 13.8% said quality of contact. This one is a pretty straightforward check on if you know the inputs that affect WOBA and ex-WOBA, and there's really no debate on this one. Quality of competition and leverage of plate appearances impact neither. Quality of contact is a factor in ex-WOBA, but not in WOBA. While defense on batted balls can impact WOBA, can turn what wouldn't have been a hit into a hit, but not xWOBA, which only looks at the quality of contact to predict an outcome, assuming a neutral defense. Therefore, the answer is defense on batted balls. Question 16. Given no other information, which of the following catchers would you prefer to start tomorrow's game? Catcher ERA refers to the ERA of the pitcher's pitching when a particular catcher is catching. Catcher A, 850 OPS, 425 catcher ERA. Catcher B, 700 OPS, 350 catcher ERA. 64.2% of Reddit said catcher B, while 35.8% of Reddit said catcher A. On first glance, this question looks like you'd need to break out a calculator or a spreadsheet to calculate the run difference per game between an 850 OPS player and 700 OPS player, and compare that to the run difference between a 4.25 ERA and 3.5 ERA. But it's a lot simpler than that. This question is testing if you know which stats are more reliable in making a determination on player value. OPS is mostly within the player's control and does a great job describing a player's offensive value. And catcher A is clearly way ahead of catcher B in that regard. But catcher ERA is not a very reliable stat. It depends on a number of factors outside of that catcher's control, such as quality of the starting pitcher they're catching for, opponent, defense, etc. A catcher's ERA is way less indicative of their ability as a defensive catcher than OPS is for their ability as a hitter. Because of that, catcher A is the best answer. Question 17. Given no other information, which of the following players would you pick to start today's game? Hitter A, 240 batting average, 305 on base percentage, 475 slugging this season in 404 plate appearances, but he's 13 for 18 with 4 home runs against today's starting pitcher. Hitter B, 305 batting average, 325 on base percentage, 375 slugging this season in 389 plate appearances, and he's 5 for 20 with 2 home runs against today's starting pitcher. Or hitter C, 225 batting average, 420 on base percentage, or 440 slugging this season in 403 plate appearances, and he's 1 for 15 with 7 Ks against today's starting pitcher. 71.7% of Reddit answered hitter A, 15.6% answered hitter C, and 12.7% answered hitter B. And this one got a lot of debate. I said before, you should put more stock into the larger sample size, which would indicate you should compare these players' season stats versus their small sample batter versus pitcher splits, which then says you should go with hitter C with their 860 OPS versus hitter A's 780 OPS and hitter B's 700 OPS. But a lot of people correctly pointed out that not only are the batter versus pitcher splits extremely different for these 3 matchups, because the small sample is against the same pitcher for the whole sample, you should be able to make some conclusions about the matchup. And that completely makes sense. Maybe hitter C is a lefty that can't hit lefties, and the pitcher in question is a lefty that just has their number. If this was a real-life question, I would dig into the matchups, watch the video, see if a player is completely lost against that pitcher, or if he's seeing him perfectly. However, this isn't a real-life question. We're given no other information. And as counterintuitive as it sounds, in the majority of cases, batter versus pitcher splits are way less important in predicting future results versus the underlying player stats. If you ever get heavily into fantasy baseball or daily baseball gambling, sites will list batter versus pitcher matchups and give recommendations based on that. But the more experienced people that have done it for a long time will tell you you should mostly ignore batter versus pitcher splits because they don't tell you nearly as much as they seem to on the surface. I do think this is a poorly worded question, and the one that brings up the most legitimate, well, what if this is the case scenarios. But that's why I went into detail at the outset of how these types of tests work. In the majority of cases, hitter C is better with his overall season stats and would be the player to start in this game. Question 18. Of the following hitting stats, which is the most robust, i.e. value-driven, all-encompassing? WOBA, WRC+, OPS, total bases, or on-base percentage? 71.2% of Reddit said WRC+, 13.9% said WOBA, 11.6% said OPS, and then a very small amount selected on-base percentage followed by total bases. This is another straightforward, do you know these specific stats questions, and the order of the Reddit responses is right on track with how these stats rank in regards to being value-driven and all-encompassing. WOBA is a very good stat, but WRC Plus goes the extra step of adjusting for park factors and showing the player versus the league baseline, so it gives you a little more information. WRC Plus is the best answer. Question 19. Which element of a hitter's triple slash line is most important to his offensive value? Batting average, on-base percentage, or slugging percentage? 74.3% of Reddit said on-base percentage, 23.7% said slugging, and 2% said batting average. This is another straightforward one, at least on the surface. The best answer would be on-base percentage. Although there was a little confusion where someone even posted an article by Dan Zimborski that stated team on-base percentage has a weaker relationship with runs per game than team slugging. But the article was talking about variance in stats, and on-base percentage being a smaller number has less variance, and on a point-for-point basis, 1 point of on-base percentage is worth about 1.4 points of slugging. Dan was kind enough to respond to clarify. It's a subtlety that I probably should have elaborated on in the original piece, but I didn't since I'm trying, maybe too hard here, to avoid going on lengthy tangents not related to the subject of the pieces, since that can be a habit of mine. Tom Tango even commented on this question. The toughest one I thought was on-base percentage or slugging. I'm not sure that was a fair question. I fully believe the writers of this test intended for on-base percentage to be the answer, but yeah, there is some confusion here. Question 20. Given no other information, which of the following hitters would you most want to have on your team? Hitter A, 240 batting average, 280 on-base percentage, 550 slugging. Hitter B, 260 batting average, 420 on-base percentage, 410 slugging, or hitter C, 320 batting average, 350 on base percentage, and 480 slugging. 47.7% of Reddit said hitter B, 44.8% said hitter C, and 7.5% said hitter A. This one hurts me the most because Reddit, 74.3% of you just answered on-base percentage was the most important element of a triple slash. But only 47.7% of you picked the player with the highest on-base percentage, with 3 players having the same 830 OPS. For hitter B and hitter C, you're directly swapping out 70 points of on-base percentage for 70 points of slugging. A few people pointed out, hey, hitter C has a 320 batting average versus hitter B's 260 batting average, so that's 70 points of slugging and 60 points of batting average. But batting average is baked into slugging. By counting both, you're double counting batting average. To show what the difference between the two players means, if given 100 plate appearances, all their stats would be equal except hitter C would have an additional 5 singles and 1 double over hitter B, while hitter B would have an additional 12 walks. What's more valuable, 5 singles and a double, or 12 walks? To further test this point, I used a lineup simulator to plug in the hypothetical runs scored for a lineup of 9 of hitter A, 9 of hitter B, and 9 of hitter C. The results are hitter A's team would score 5.007 runs per game, hitter B's would score 6.181 runs per game, and hitter C's would score 5.594 runs per game. The best answer to this question is hitter B. Question 21. Your starter has a 320 FIP on the season and has thrown 5 shutout innings so far, 18 batters faced, in today's must-win game. He has thrown 71 pitches so far today. You have 5 rested relievers in your bullpen with FIPs between 3.2 and 3.4 for the season, and you're currently winning 1-0. Given no other information, what would you do for the 6th inning? Stick with your starter or bring in a reliever? 71.1% of Reddit said stick with your starter, while 28.9% said bring in a reliever. This is another one people are going to get angry over and bring up all sorts of examples of managers bringing out their starter early only for the bullpen to blow it. But the key to this question is 18 batters faced. There is a well-documented third time through the order penalty that starting pitchers have. Their stats get worse by a significant margin compared to the first or second time through the order. If a starting pitcher has a FIP of 3.2, that FIP is probably 3 for the first time through the order, 3.1 for the second time, and over 3.4 for the third time. Therefore, as much as people won't like this, the most statistically sound way to go in the majority of cases given those stats is to bring in a reliever. Leave your examples where this didn't work out for the team down in the comments. Question 22. Giving no other information, which of the following pitchers would you prefer to start Game 7 of the World Series if it were tomorrow? Pitcher A, 2.5 FIP in the regular season, 200 innings pitched, 5.5 FIP in the playoffs, 20 innings pitched. Or pitcher B, 4.5 FIP in the regular season, 200 innings pitched, 1.5 FIP in the playoffs, 20 innings pitched. 58.7% of Reddit said pitcher A, while 41.3% said pitcher B. This is a running theme for this quiz, but you go with the larger sample size, and a 2 FIP difference over 200 innings is massive. This would be like benching 2013 Cy Young winner prime Clayton Kershaw in favor of 2013 AJ Griffin because Kershaw struggled in a few playoff games. Therefore, the best answer is pitcher A. Question 23, true or false? Teams need a balance between power hitters and contact hitters to be good enough to win the World Series. 55.3% of Reddit said true, 44.7% of Reddit said false. This is another one of those always never questions because it proposed a team needs balance between power hitters and contact hitters to be good enough. Do you really think a team of 9 Pete Alonsos on offense wouldn't be good enough to win the World Series? To go deeper on it though, balance isn't required at all in offensive production. Runs are runs and it doesn't matter how you get them. If you tell me to choose between a team of 9 players with a 900 OPS versus a team of 9 players all with a 700 OPS, but you tell me the second team is balanced between power and contact hitters, I'm still going to take the first team because they're going to score vastly more runs. The best answer to this question is false. Question 24. Which of the following statistics is most useful for evaluating a reliever? Strikeout percentage, strikeouts per 9, or left on base percentage? 53.9% of Reddit said strikeout percentage, 30.3% said left on base percentage, and 15.7% said strikeouts per 9. This is another question just testing to see if you're familiar with how these stats correlate with run prevention. I went into detail on my WAR video why strikeout percentage is better than strikeouts per 9, and left on base percentage is normally viewed as a luck-based stat you use to determine if a player is due for a regression. Most pitchers trend towards a 72% left on base percentage regardless of their ability, so it isn't a very good stat to use in a vacuum to evaluate a player. The best answer for this question is strikeout percentage. Question 25. Which of the following players was more valuable on stolen base attempts? Runner A, 42 stolen bases, 23 caught stealing. Or runner B, 12 stolen bases with 2 caught stealing. 83.8% of Reddit said runner B, while 16.3% said runner A. This is a check on if you know even if a runner steals a lot of bases, if their success rate is low, typically most people cite below 70 to 75%, they're actually providing negative value to the team. Runner A is at a 64.6% success rate, so providing negative value, while runner B is an 85.7% success rate. Runner B is the best answer. Question 26. Team A and Team B both currently have a 2-WAR third baseman and have the option of signing a 5-WAR third baseman to a 1-year, $15 million contract for next season. Team A is currently projected to win 70 games next season, while Team B is currently projected to win 88 games next season. Given no other information, which team would benefit more from signing the 5-WAR third baseman? Team A, Team B, or both teams would benefit equally? 48.4% of Reddit said Team B, 38.9% said both teams would benefit equally, 12.7% said Team A. This is a bit of a tricky question and one I had to think about for a bit, but ultimately it's a question of when teams should buy versus when they should sell. For a team that's on the edge of making the playoffs like Team B, that 5-WAR player could put them over the edge and make them World Series contenders, while a 5-WAR player for Team A would turn them from a terrible team to a slightly less terrible team. Because of that, Team B is the best answer. But someone in the comments brought up an excellent point. Team A could get that player and then trade them for prospects, so they could benefit quite a bit from signing them. That's some outside-the-box thinking that I give an A+ to and applaud. It's an incredible point that didn't even cross my mind. Still, every team's ultimate goal should be to win the World Series, and for Team B, this brings them tangibly closer to that goal than Team A. So I still think Team B would be the best answer. But I will say that point that person brought up does lead me to the conclusion that this is just a bad question, so I don't like it. Question 27. Given no other information, which of the following pitchers would you most want to be on your team next year? Pitcher A, 60 innings pitched, 90 strikeouts, 10 walks, 3 ERA, 0 saves, 5 blown saves. Pitcher B, 60 innings pitched, 60 strikeouts, 30 walks, 2.50 ERA, 20 saves, 0 blown saves. Or pitcher C, 60 innings pitched, 90 strikeouts, 40 walks, 2.75 ERA, 50 saves, and 5 blown saves. 59.6% of Reddit picked pitcher A, 21.3% picked pitcher B, and 19.1% picked pitcher C. This is just a FIP question in disguise. As most sources will tell you, FIP correlates more with future performance than ERA. The inputs to FIP are strikeout rate, walk rate, and home run rate. Pitcher A is tied for the best strikeout rate of the bunch and clearly has the best walk rate. And with home run rate unknown, we just assume league average, which is exactly what xFIP does. ERA is less reliable than FIP, and saves and blown saves are inconsequential stats when it comes to evaluating future pitcher performance. The best answer is pitcher A. Question 28. Which of the following could cause a player's xWOBA to be higher than his WOBA? Hitting into a lot of hard hit outs, picking up a lot of weakly hit singles, spraying the ball to all parts of the field, facing weaker competition compared to league average, or hitting a lot of cheap home runs that would have been caught for outs in most ballparks. 72.2% of Reddit said hitting into a lot of hard hit outs, 11.4% said facing weaker competition compared to league average, and 7.4% said hitting a lot of cheap home runs. This is just another check on if you know the inputs that go into advanced stats like xWOBA or WOBA. xWOBA is completely based on quality of contact, assuming that harder hit balls are more likely to be hits. Hitting hard hit balls, even if they're outs, would raise xWOBA. WOBA is based on the outcome, so hitting a hard hit ball that's an out would count like any other out and lower WOBA. The best answer is hitting into a lot of hard hit outs. Question 29. When evaluating a AA pitching prospect, which of the following statistics is the most important? ERA, win-loss record, or strikeout to walk ratio? 90.7% of Reddit said strikeout to walk ratio. 8.9% said ERA, and 0.4% said win-loss record. Pretty straightforward question here. Strikeout to walk ratio is the stat a pitcher has most control over of the three, and the most predictive stat of their future performance of the three. Strikeout to walk ratio is the best answer. Question 30. Given no other information, which of the following relief pitchers would you prefer to have on the mound in the 9th inning of a must-win game? Pitcher A, 2.5 FIP, 3 consecutive appearances with a blown save, or pitcher B, 3 FIP, 3 consecutive appearances with a successful save. 52.4% of Reddit said pitcher B, while 47.6% said pitcher A. This one comes back full circle to the same concepts in question 1. Put more weight into larger samples, as well as more reliable and descriptive stats. Blown saves or successful saves are not very reliable stats in determining pitcher performance, while FIP is. Plus, FIP has the much larger sample size, so the best answer to this question is pitcher A. And that's the end of the quiz. I will reiterate that I fully believe there is an objective best answer to each of these questions, or at least an intended best answer to those questions by the person that wrote this quiz. But I also think there are some poorly worded or designed questions that can make some of them confusing. I also got confirmation from someone else who applied for the Yankees twice within the last 2 years, and they said they got this exact same quiz both times. So, Yankees? I probably just cost you the expense of a consultant to rewrite this quiz, so sorry about that. If you want to say how some of these questions suck, or if you disagree with some of my answers or reasoning, as long as you're respectful, I'd love to hear it in the comments, and we'll probably respond. If you aren't going to be respectful, just keep it to yourself. Thanks for watching.